Time, never enough time.
Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Caverns of Time. I'm Ryan, also known as Sarathus, and beside me today...
Hello everyone, I'm Taylor, otherwise known as Untitled.
So, what is this podcast? Basically, it's a podcast where myself and Taylor talk about our WoW memories and experiences. We've both been playing WoW played WoW for quite a long time, about 8 or 9 years. It sort of varies. But when did you start playing WoW, Taylor?
Well, I should mention first of all that we both started when we were 12. However, I started in November 2006 and you started...
April 2007. And we're 21 now, so we've been played WoW for quite a long time. And why are we doing this podcast? Basically, I recently quit WoW, hopefully for good, because we know...
It's a fairly addictive game, isn't it?
Yeah. So I quit WoW about a week ago in World of Draenor. And
I should interject and say that I never actually started WoD at all.
Yeah. When did you...
I stopped.
Did you play? You played a little bit of Mists of Pandaria.
I got to level 88 and I just quit. So.
In Kunlai. Yeah. And we've always looked for a reason to do a podcast, but we can never really think of a theme. We know that we can both talk for hours on end about World of Warcraft, so this is...
Yeah, we can discourse on WoW for as long as we like.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So, and how will this podcast be structured, and what is this episode about? So each episode will feature its own expansion. So in this episode, for example, we'll be talking about Vanilla.
Logical place to start, of course.
Yeah, at the very start, and then Burning Crusade, Wrath, Cataclysm, Mist, and WoD. And episodes will also feature sort of bonus conversations about things like music, cinematics, the art, machinimas, voice acting, for example, just different stuff like that.
So it'll be in two sections essentially, X-Pack and then...
That's correct, yes.
Sort of
And should we get into Vanilla?
Okay, we'll see you there, I guess.
And so Taylor, you started in Vanilla and you were the first person to play WoW, I think.
Yep.
And so do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Essentially, I was referred to WoW by another player, Anonini. He was a dwarf hunter, I believe. And
that was in high school, yeah?
That was in high school.
The first year.
Yeah, 12 years old, I believe, at the time. So the memories are quite a bit hazy. So I think the very first sort of reference to WoW I ever heard was this player and another player were actually talking about wool, and of course I would have had no sort of idea about the significance of wool trading in auction houses and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, it does seem quite a strange thing to say. You're trying to play, you're wondering what game they're playing. They talk about wool. I've got 20 stacks of wool. What the?
And I remember the very first time I got WoW. This guy actually recommended a whole bunch of classes, and Paladin. Human Paladin was the first one he recommended, and that was the very first character I created.
Right.
But first of all, we probably should talk about the getting the actual game when the game wasn't a digital thing, and you can actually buy the retail box. And you can still buy
I wish I still had those boxes.
You can still buy
I'm sure you do as well.
Now, of course, but yeah, this was the time when you actually had to install the 5 or so discs. Was it 5?
I think so. Maybe, probably. Yeah, there was a lot of this. I remember.
Yeah. So I remember going to after school. I remember going to PC World, and the PC World was actually almost shut. It was night time.
Right.
And
so it almost stopped you from playing.
Yeah. So it was
creating this legacy.
And this was actually on my birthday, I think. Yeah, it was on the 14th, and I started the next day.
So you got WoW on your birthday?
On your birthday. On my birthday, I should say.
Wow.
Yeah. That'll be my 12th. That's the thing. I don't know if it was 11th birthday or 12th birthday, but that's yeah. So essentially, I went into PC World. With my dad actually, and got the retail box. And I remember, because I had school the next day, I couldn't actually play it. And I remember thinking, for a kid to get this on his birthday and he couldn't actually play it, that's a genuine thought. I remember I couldn't actually play it. So
right, yeah.
I remember laying the box out in the living room. I remember laying the box down and spreading out all the discs and looking at the manual and things, and.
Just the mysterious essences coming off those very discs.
Actually, that's actually a really good point to make, because those discs. Think about nowadays in 2015. We don't play anymore, but 2015.
There's something more special about a disc.
Yeah. So, I believe after school the next day, I would have started. It wasn't actually after school the next day. The very morning I was supposed to go to school.
Right.
I actually got the first levels done. I got the first levels
so
done.
magical.
I know.
Is that? And so, do you think that's when you first created your first character in Teldrassil, or is that sort of the human paladin that you were told to make?
I can't actually remember when I specifically created the human paladin, but I remember I did, and I remember I went. I got. In
I would
contact
really
with-
like to know the name of that human paladin, because
Yeah, I
we
don't
sort of know that your first character was Santuri, the one that sort of, everybody knows.
Yeah, still around today.
Yeah.
But, so I do remember creating this human paladin. First of all, my very first memory, and of course, something that should go hand in hand with old memories is bad graphics to me.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
So I remember Hazy, Elwyn, Goldshire,
Northshire.
Yeah, Northshire.
We are WoW veterans, we should just say, but sometimes names can be quite hazy.
That's one of them. Yeah, it's Northshire.
Just a little glitch in the
glitch in the matrix
program.
Right. So essentially, I remember getting in contact with Anonini, this dwarf hunter, and I remember him riding up through the mist.
I do remember your memory of this.
Yeah, so I spawned, and then he actually came through the mist. And so, essentially, that's how everything got started. So he came through the mist, and that was the first sort of interaction. Obviously, when I spawned, I would have seen other characters and things, but that was the first proper interaction, and I had no idea what to do. I had no idea how to type, whisper, all that sort of stuff.
And I do remember, I think he came, it's sort of because when you're new to the game, everything seems different, it seems bigger, it seems more magical. And I sort of do remember him riding on his ram, because he was a dwarf, he probably only had his racial mount, riding on his ram through the trees, and it sort of seemed magical, everything was new, everything was bigger, and he came through, and you must obviously be there. How the do you get a ram?
I know, but again, that's the memories are so hazy that's pretty much all we can really think about.
That's
so.
And every time, obviously, you recall a memory, you think about the new version of that memory, and it gets hazier and hazier. So, I guess it's a good idea to do a podcast.
Get all your memories down. And,
Yes.
So
I guess you installed the discs.
I installed all the discs,
and that must have took quite a while in those days.
Yeah. So I was spoken about the very first character I created. I have no idea what the name was. So it would be great to. We should.
It's strange because I think one of the first Alliance characters I created was also a human paladin, but we'll get on to that.
We should mention that we actually don't have any of the screenshots.
Yes, a very sad fact that throughout the 9 or so years, things happen. You lose your hard drives, you change computers, and you don't back up everything.
You get angry and quit.
You get angry at lag and quit.
And it just so happens that I believe the only real screenshots we have collectively.
There are some.
There's some old,
some early ones from TBC. Nothing from RAF at all.
Nothing from vanilla, but we have nothing from vanilla.
Nothing from vanilla. Some like 7 or so. Excuse me.
So
from TBC. I think let's just go over this. Nothing from RAF. Cataclysm we have tons because that started and then Mocked Down Wads so we do have some.
So that's the problem.
But not from the early days.
When you play a game and you're about 12 years old and you've got no screenshots to refer back to, it's one of those things where it's very hard and you constantly reminisce.
And people and people should understand that when you play a game from such a young age, it really does define
it gets ingrained in
from your formative years when you play and just thinking back to that, it must have been so magical. Like it seems like that now when you think about the memories. But you could just drift off.
This is why we're making a podcast, because we can speak constantly about it.
So where are we now? I think you've downloaded the discs.
I've done Anonini and all that. So
sorry.
I
just felt such back in the golden ages of vanilla was there.
So I guess we should start. I've done the first levels, of course. I've done the first.
Right, but that was then your first proper character.
So there's this. I've got a choice of characters, of course, and the screen looks different. It's vanilla login screen.
Of course.
And I have the choice of all these different characters, but I choose Night Elf.
Right, and now why do you think you chose Night Elf?
That's the thing. I'm not entirely sure why I chose Night Elf.
Yeah.
So, but
I guess you just thought it looked cool because it's hard to think what you thought looked cool back in 12 years old.
I chose the blue hair that would become iconic.
For us.
For us.
No, not for anybody else, but for a select group of people. But
we're talking about So, essentially, even more of an enigma is the name.
Now, where did you think that came from? Obviously,
it's actually a fairly sophisticated. It's not sophisticated, but it's a complex name.
No, obviously, you were 12 years old. You must have thought, well, it's got an X in it. It's
cool,
dude.
It must be cool.
Cool, dude. 1, 2, 3.
Xanturi.
Xanturi.
So
now it looks like it should be spelled with a Z.
Exactly. Yeah.
A Z.
But It's almost got a sort of Japanese, Chinese type.
Zantori. Yeah.
I believe we did like anime at the time, so
Yes.
but X is more Chinese, isn't it? So
I'm not sure. Maybe it is. Yes.
yeah. So Night Elf Warrior, I should say Night Elf Warrior.
Yes, and it's hard to say, but why do you think you chose warrior?
I think the reason it is because mage would have been. We obviously know that mage nowadays. You may confirm this. The mage is.
Well, I am a one-person character player, but
that's what
I do know quite a bit.
And this is the point we should make. I played a mage. I was the one that played the mage, so I should know. But anyway, the reason the reason that I created a warrior was probably because
simplicity.
It's a basic warrior class.
The druid does combat through druidic spells and magic, and the warrior.
This is in the middle.
He does stuff by bashing shit up.
Yeah, he's essentially the default middle of the road sort of guy.
That's why I play warrior now, or played warrior now.
So yeah, I chose warrior because I guess I like swords, and I guess I like the Night Elf sort of look.
Yeah.
So now the thing is,
or maybe at the time, just because you were 12, it was random. You just thought, I'm gonna just play this race in this character. And just go with it and see, because I don't know what even an MMO is. I don't even know how these people are able to be here and talk to me, and how do these things
nowadays.
And what is online?
I know, it's one of those things where it's so common nowadays. You don't even think of it. These are other people. It's an MMO.
That's the thing I bring up, because the games we played previously were mostly single player PS1 games and Game Boy games and
of
stuff.
course, other people had this experience already with EverQuest, but for us,
older people,
older people,
but
we would have been about, So, and if, I guess we just start with Enter
Santuri. Enter Santuri.
Yeah.
And
Enter World. And of course the little, I don't know, it's obviously changed nowadays, but the little the sort of cinematic, the end game cinematic.
I think it's the same, it's just the voiceover changes.
I think Malfurion Awakens in this, in the new one from Cataclysm. I think the actual voiceover narration.
No,
changes.
the voiceover does change, but the camera, the same camera.
Yeah. So now, speaking of. We're going to speak of Teldrassil now, and that zone is still my favourite zone.
Yeah.
Of all time, and throughout all.
And we will talk about the music later, but the music in Teldrassil.
Yeah.
And just that, it's hard to describe this magic feeling where. I mean, do you want to talk about it when you first become your character? You're standing with the whole world.
Well, no.
Sorry, am I going too fast?
Not the whole world. I didn't know it was the whole world.
Yeah, the whole all possibilities. That's what I mean to say.
Yeah, So, I enter Teldrassil, and I'm standing, obviously, and you get your first, you're in line with your first quest NPC, quest giver, and...
I think I remember his name, but I don't want to embarrass myself just in case I'm wrong. Something.
It's something, it begins with an I think.
Aphelion? No, that's really...
Aphelion. So, obviously, again, that's one of the things that whenever I think about an very old Golden Age WoW memory, it just is immediately associated with bad low res graphics. So it's synonymous with, so it all sort of links together. So you've got a field of mist, which sort of
purpley, grassy.
Yeah, and it's sort of
tails.
Yeah. It weren't the graphics.
The graphics were so bad that
the texture.
It was all it was like, it's hard to describe. It's not exactly the texture was bad, but the ground was split, and maybe it was the texture, but it repeated badly. It wasn't blended in correctly.
So essentially, I had this whole world to explore, but I didn't know just how big the world was, and even in vanilla, of course, it's still massive. So I guess we just start questing, and that's the thing. I should just say, I think that the best memory, the best image that you can sort of get is you being Xantur with your blue hair from the back, and just the sort of the old animation that the Night Elves did of just looking around, and that sort of summarises this. Where the fuck? Where am I now? Just Xantur looking around, this sort of the cocking the head that they do. It's perfect. As soon as you log in, this Night Elf looks around. That's perfect.
Definitely.
So, and I do remember
looks around to see the splendour of Azeroth.
Yeah. I do remember doing the first 5 levels or so. Maybe it might not have been 5. That's a bit too much before school. But I do remember before going to school.
Just that feeling, levels, I can imagine.
Waking up.
You must have wanted to get home so badly.
Yeah. And that's that's it. I just started questing, I guess,
Mm.
and then just kept on questing, and then. Where do you come into this? I mean, you obviously started in April 2007. I started in November 2006.
So I'm guessing you must. I know a friend, Stephen, also started playing as well. You showed him the ropes. He created a character called Aegeus, and also a level.
Yeah. After a few months of playing, obviously, and you hadn't actually played yet. So Aegeus, our friend, started playing before you, of course.
That's correct. Yes.
So essentially, I remember he came down to our house, and then we actually showed him the game.
Showed him the ropes.
We showed him.
I do remember it wasn't too good of an experience because I think you had red latency there.
Red latency.
You created a torrent.
In
Mulgore, and you had red latency, and it was.
High
Here, check out this
latency.
game, Stephen.
It wasn't the best advertisement for a while, was it?
And you were running about like 20 feet away from a mob, and it was still hitting you, and you died. I think just because the lag was so
and then
bad.
the plane striders and all that. So it's just so iconic. So that's how our friend Stephen, otherwise known as Aegeus, got started.
That's
so
right.
I believe he went away and actually got the game and played it. So
what was that thing about you? You got in Teldrassil. He was jumping from the bank.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to go into that.
He didn't seem that interested. He didn't seem that interested at the start.
How do you talk? How do you bring somebody into a completely new world?
Yeah. So he like me, I guess, started a night off because he thought it looked cool, and he chose his what would for us become iconic as white hair. So he looked essentially like me. He was a warrior as well.
Yeah, it was a copy.
But he had white hair. So I believe for the first few levels he wasn't that interested in. I believe he was only about level 2, by the way.
The first few levels.
But we actually escorted him, I escorted him to Darnassus.
Right.
But something before we get on to all that and progression and things, what would you have been like when you saw me and Stephen play?
Right, that's the thing here, isn't it? Of me.
Do we know when Stephen actually what month Stephen played? Did he start in 2007 or 2006?
I think I remember that he started from 2007.
Right. So
and then so definitely it was you then Stephen then me, but I was quite a bit later.
Yeah.
I think. So wait,
did you take any interest in
now, there was this point of the Gaia Online thing. We used to play a web browser thing, a forum thing called Gaia Online, and it was sort of you got out of that, came to WoW. I think I was still playing Gaia.
We should keep in mind,
Gaia.
We started.
Oh no,
Gaia,
Gaia's quite long ago.
We started Gaia in 2003.
So what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of something separate, but
you maybe
so
essentially, Aegeus started next, and then I obviously leveled with him. I believe I remember if we can just skip a little bit. I remember playing with him in Darkshore and getting new capes and all this sort of stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I remember.
I thought he did that on his own.
No, I'm fairly sure I would have leveled with him. I do remember him running around in Darkshore and things.
Right.
So, I guess we'll come back to where I was because I can't exactly remember
it's quite hard.
where.
So where was I? I think. I was looking at you playing WoW and
your new computer and things. If you want to talk about that at all, and that was the day you started playing.
Right. Yeah. I did I got a new computer the day I started playing WoW. I think was it to play WoW? I can't remember.
It might have been the purpose to play WoW.
And because I was looking at you playing, I think by this time you were level 40. So it was quite a long time.
So this was back in a time where I wasn't too
WoW was a tiny bit harder, and you were a 12-year-old.
Yeah. So essentially,
it took about 15 minutes to kill one mob.
Yeah.
Just sword and board or whatever.
Yeah, and essentially, and I remember in Darkshore specifically, it took me about a week to do one level, 20 to 21.
And nowadays, heirlooms, get to 100 in an hour.
Yeah. So you got.
So I was looking at you playing WoW, and I was thinking, well, that looks quite cool.
Actually, I just want to interject. Sorry. I remember you came through my room when I was much lower level, and you said, the graphics are pretty good for how big this game is, but that's a funny point to make because both of us had no idea how big it actually was.
Yeah. So I came through to your room, and I think I seen you in Tanaris. That's why, and I was looking at you killing.
See, this is the thing where the memories get a bit muddled up. I remember standing on a hill in Teldrassil. This is far back.
I came through various times to your room and seen you play WoW. Yeah,
you would have done. Yeah.
So I eventually decided to start playing. I got that new computer, and I started. Do you want to go into my first character?
Start your first character, yeah.
So I started. I think the first character I played, it wasn't the human paladin. It was the undead hunter.
Is this before I gave you the chance to make random characters like the hunter? And
So I created Urukai on your computer.
On my computer, it must have been. Yeah.
Right. So I created randomly named Urukai, undead hunter.
Negative hunter.
It was an undead hunter.
Was it?
I created an undead hunter, and I remember jumping about this fence on in Brill next to the sort of windmills and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, my first character that I can remember. I do remember saying to you sort of this confusion about vendors and saying and thinking that grey vendor gear was the highest level items you could get, and saying that how do Alliance have the chance? I don't know, but it was something about vendors.
It's hard to,
in zones, and it seems like Horde have more zones. I was looking at the map getting frustrated by saying that that it seems like Horde have more zones, but anyway.
And that's the thing that we should mention, that obviously this is a time where you have no idea how the game actually works. And then of course I remember I've got down on a sheet somewhere that
you did have an idea of how the game works, and you were telling me, Ryan, shut up.
Yeah. Essentially, it's just one of those things where when I first started, I had no idea how to whisper people. I had no idea what WTB, like want to buy, and all WTS, want to sell, and all that sort of stuff. I had no idea what the acronyms meant. And obviously, it would have been the same for everyone, really, unless somebody guided them properly. Yeah, I've done that to some.
But it is different being a 12-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. If you're an adult, you can pick up a lot quicker.
And all the things to jump into.
Yeah, of all the things.
So my first character was a human paladin called Daedrin. I think I got that name from Oblivion, Daedric Armor.
Daedric Armor.
Because I was playing Oblivion at the time, I think, and that was my account name as well, Daedrin. We were both on the same thought.
So yeah, this is one of those weird things where things change, I guess. My account name was Data X.
And now that sounds like any gamer tag on Xbox Live at the moment.
It's one of those things where it's.
But you're a cool dude, man. Data X, hacker boy.
Yeah.
But
So that's just a thing of how things change, sort of.
Yeah. But it's just funny to us.
I should still say, obviously it is now. It's still Data X.
Yeah.
Although I do log in with the other email and all that sort of stuff. But.
And so, have I said my first character was a human paladin called Daedrin from Daedric Armor.
Yep.
I got to level 29. We're going into progression a bit here, but I got to level 29.
I believe I stopped in Darkshore anyway, so go ahead.
Right. I got to level 29. One of the last memories I think I had on Daedrin was being in Redridge.
That's a phenomenon, isn't it? You had many characters and stopped, but you're gonna.
Yeah. So what stopped in Redridge at level 29, because of. Sorry, I was in Redridge, and I remember picking Retribution and thinking, well, these talent trees are quite complicated. These specs. But I do remember picking Ret and then quitting because of lag, and that's where lag sort of the first thing comes in. That lag used to be a problem plaguing us for most years.
Yeah. And that's actually that's the reason that we quit sometimes. The lag was terrible, right? Internet connection was just rubbish.
Yeah. So. And then again, I started with another paladin. And now, did I say? So I'm forgetting what I said, but I think he was level 29. I created another paladin called Ares. I think a name I got from Steven. And he was level 29 as well, another paladin, and I stopped him because of lag again, I think.
Yeah. You created so many characters and stopped it, and you would have stopped in Wetlands and got the green helm for the human. Got the iconic green helm. Sure.
Daedrin was stopped in Redridge, but I remember, for some reason I remember Ares stopping in, where was it now? I don't think I can remember, but
one of those things where you kind of.
But did I have a green helm? You had that green helm with
we
the.
would have all had the green helm, at some point, but
being plate users, but
yeah.
So where are we? Ares, Daedrin, you're level 40, but you're level 50 by now or something.
I'm some level, but that's the thing. It's hard to remember, isn't it?
And then I think I created a Knight of Rogue after that called Cyphus, and that's sort of where things we're just going to go freeform now.
Yeah. So what? Sorry, what?
So I got to 51 on Cyphus, and you sort of just went off and did your big boy things after that.
Yeah,
but we're
yeah.
going to go back and talk about sort of just random vanilla
yeah,
memories.
We'll freeform it.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest memories, and actually we haven't even spoken about this, of course, is meeting a person called Priam, who's actually a night elf hunter. Priam was essentially the first ever sort of social contact I had in WoW, and it was a long-term sort of relationship, I guess. So one of the first things I remember was actually accidentally taking a griffin to Ironforge from Meniful Harbour.
Now I know you like to do things slowly and officially and
Yeah.
do things properly, and taking a griffin to Ironforge.
This is a perfect...
From where was it? Sorry, did you say?
Meniful Harbour.
Right.
So obviously come from Route Ferrin, obviously end up in Meniful Harbour, and
Right.
So I believe Priam was actually guiding me. He was telling me how to do all these things, and he would have been higher level at that point, giving me gold and all that.
What
sort
level
of
do you
stuff.
think it was?
I don't know. I can't actually tell you. So
Not 68, because I think this
not
whole
60,
thing
no,
was
no. So that's the thing. It's one of those strange experiences where this person is leading you. He's much higher level, and then he takes you through those zones, and you level together and things. And we would have had that with Stephen and all that sort of stuff, but it's like the first proper contact. So I remember, I don't quite know what the circumstances were or what we were actually trying to do, but I remember I accidentally clicked the little flight symbol to go to Ironforge, and that's a great example because it would have taken me from somewhere I had no real clue about, coming from Darkshore to Meniful Harbour, where's Meniful Harbour and all that sort of stuff, and then flying through all these zones to get to Dunmoreau and then to get to Ironforge. And then that's just,
and that must have felt like your whole world was breaking.
This is World of Warcraft essentially.
And you think, obviously, you must have figured out the. Oh, sorry, what level were you when you flew to Ironforge?
Oh, it must have been about
Quite early.
20-ish, 30-ish.
Right, because I wonder if you figured out the map by then and how big the world
Yeah.
was, but you never actually really. You could see the map, of course,
Yeah,
but you didn't really realise how big this world was.
Well, I remember talking about the scale of WoW. It's one of those things where you travel through Teldrassil and you're astonished, but then you come into Darnassus and you're even
and
more
it's
astonished,
even
and you
bigger.
realise just how big the game is, and there's cities and there's people and different races.
Yeah.
You see most of the night, just obviously you see most of the night elves, but then you see all these other people in major cities. So that's one of the first. I don't quite know what happens after that, but that's one of the first memories.
And speaking of going into Darnassus with different people, different races, people on big scary mounts, people with gear that doesn't look like it was just crappy bits of leather stuck on your shoulders. There was a thing, I remember we were quite into sort of our media at the time, even then, and we actually tried to create a podcast. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Now, this is it's a pretty astonishing feat, really, because starting a podcast when you're about 12, 13, probably maybe 12, I guess. And I remember being in Teldrassil. I remember sending out whispers to come on this podcast.
Really? I never knew that.
I remember sending out whispers. Of course, we'd have had to try and get in contact with somebody.
Yeah.
So I had no idea what level this character might have been, but let's just say he was 60. He must have been, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this character, don't know what his name was, but essentially got him as a 12-year-old or so to actually come on Skype.
Can you come on my podcast, please?
To come on Skype and talk about WoW. So it was almost like a WoW journalist without having any real WoW experience.
Yeah.
So I remember talking about his money situation and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And he said he's got like enough money to play for WoW, to pay for WoW, and
Just barely, I think.
just barely, yeah. And I can't really remember any other conversation about that, but I put it on some blog or something.
Yeah. If we could find it, we could slice it in maybe.
We could slice it in maybe if we find it.
Your
yeah,
high-pitched
yeah,
voice.
Yeah. That's one of the. Yeah, it's just.
Crazy.
Yeah. So that was one of my first experiences as well. Do you have any that you can remember for your?
I do remember actually on the podcast that you created. I do remember I was on it. I think I can barely. This is like really hazy memories, but I think I faked for some reason saying, "Oh look, there goes level 60," and that sort of gives you a perspective of, wow, that's a big thing. And at the time, it sort of was back in the days where sort of you got respect for having gear and.
And it's something that sort of leads on to that actually is.
Look, he's just went past and he's level 60. He must be a god.
Yeah. And something that leads on to that actually is, I have to say, because obviously you're and nowadays you've played WoW, you've done most of the things in WoW, right? Leadership is actually a good sort of theme to come on to, I think.
I think I know what you're going to come on to in that.
Because being the person who sort of found WoW, essentially, and being the person who was highest level for a bit, and then Stephen overtook me eventually, but being the person who was sort of higher level at the time, I would have taken a sort of
a leadership role. Did you think you were the bee's knees?
Yeah. So I remember there was one point.
Is this Dead Mines?
It would have been Dead Mines. It would have been wetlands as well, going through the wetlands as well.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking.
No,
right.
It's a similar sort
Is this
of thing.
hug the wall thing?
This is the hug the wall thing.
Oh, right.
Where maybe I was trying to be a little bit above my station, I think. But I remember telling you, or was it just other people?
This is strange because when you said that just now, this was because me, Stephen, and you didn't actually play that much together.
No.
But I think we were in your dungeon group in Dead Mines. It was me and Stephen. That's why you said, "Fucking hug the wall."
Yeah.
So sorry for that clip there, but
so essentially, because I felt like I knew the game a bit more, and I felt like I sort of knew what I was doing and and aggroing mobs and all that sort of stuff that you guys didn't.
and you sort of knew the secret to
Yeah.
not tagging these mobs
Yeah.
down below. So you were shouting to us, "Hug the damn wall!"
Exactly.
And you were getting really
Yeah,
frustrated.
don't try to aggro. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was intense.
yeah.
And that's the thing. Let's just free-forming it. Going from, let's talk about Dead Mines and things. Going from the first instances, like Stockade, for example. It was Priam who actually was going to dungeons, I guess, for a bit. It was Priam who actually sort of took me through my first dungeon, and it
Right.
would have been Dead Mines.
Yeah.
In Moonbrook, of
And
course.
he told you the secrets to the hug the wall strategy.
Yeah.
Next level tactics.
Yeah. Next level wall hugging strategies. So yeah, essentially.
Can I see that piece of paper?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Essentially, I remember going through Dead Mines. I remember going through Stockades, and I remember actually one. It's going to be a common thing, isn't it? Saying I remember.
Now, so we've got this piece of paper here where previously about 5 months ago or something we just wrote down all the memories we could remember.
And sadly we wouldn't have had to do this if we had our screenshots, but this is our screenshots. It's just a whole bunch of
So
writing.
I'll rattle off some of your Xanturian memories we've got here, and then you sort of just talk about it. Is that
yeah,
fine?
oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's much better.
So your first duel in Teldrassil.
My first
do you
duel in
remember this?
Teldrassil, right? It was in. Sorry, this is a veterans. What's the? It's not. What's the little settlement? Dolinar, sorry.
Oh, forgive me, please.
Forgive me, please. It's Teldrassil. I should know this. So I remember dueling in Dolinar, and I remember I had a few duels with this one person. I'm not entirely sure who it was, but I remember figuring out that you could actually pop potions. I remember you could actually pop potions in a duel.
Right.
At the time, you can still do that now.
I actually don't know because I've not PvP'd in quite a while.
Well, I remember you could in this time.
Right.
You could actually.
Is that a health potion or
health potion? Yeah, health potion. So I remember this was this incredibly sort of.
Wow, I think now. Sorry, but they might have taken that out. But I don't think you can do that anymore. Otherwise, people will just spam. Well, there's a CD on potions.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I do specifically remember getting a little symbol.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember doing this duel, and it was so intense, and I believe Aegis might have been watching from the back.
Right.
Right. So it's one of those things where everyone in Dolinar were sort of crowding around and doing duels. I believe anyway.
Right.
And I eventually figured out that I could go to the vendor, a couple of yards away, I guess, and actually get a potion. So I bought the potion, and I believe I might have been successful in a couple of duels that way. I just remember a sort of hazy memory about my first duel. So yeah, that was great.
Yeah. No, so I'm just trying to read more about this. I think most of these are TBC actually.
Oh yeah. Things.
Your first whisper.
My first whisper.
Now I remember a raid on Dark Shore, but I think that was TBC where about 40 people sort of came from Zoram Strand and went to Dark Shore.
If we are doing it freeform, I guess I can just talk about.
We want to keep it to vanilla though. Is this TBC?
Right. keeping it to vanilla. The Barons raid.
Crossroads. I wasn't lucky enough to be there.
Yeah. So I remember a couple of times, actually doing a Crossroads raid with how many? It would have been 40 or more people just going through. I remember just everyone gathering in Crossroads, and that's the thing. I'm not entirely sure what level I would have been, but I'm not sure if that was the first time I ever doing a crossroad raid. Was the first time I'd ever see the Barons at
And
all.
so, how did Crossroads raid work? I know it was sort of just
Well, this is
the Alliance and Horde. It was sort of maybe an easy place to meet and then fight out.
This is one of the times where I probably would have just ran around and attack stuff.
And people,
eagerly.
I guess the point was maybe just to kill the Flight Masters, kill the people.
Yeah,
it was just an easy place to battle, I guess.
Yeah, so that was my first experience.
Not as good as Tower Mill, I guess.
Yeah, that was my first experience of sort of.
So should we say, because this is a vanilla podcast, so are there any memories you remember of levelling, apart from because I know the Tanaris thing, but we're going to get onto you dinging 60.
Strangely enough, the first memory I have of levelling is actually trying to find Desolus. It's an obscure memory,
right.
But it's one of those things where, and it leads on to sort of finding a way around, not having the map sort of uncovered yet. I remember spending almost a day trying to find Desolus.
Right.
And
did you know how to use the map?
People would have told me how to get. I couldn't quite figure out what route to take and all that sort of stuff. And of course, there's just so many. Like I remember doing Alterac Valley with Priam. I remember doing. Was it Alterac Basin or it used to be part of the geography of WoW before it was taken.
There is
out.
Alterac Valley in game, yes.
Alterac Valley, yeah. Not the PvPs, of course. It was actually proper geographical.
I don't think you probably wouldn't have PvP till you were 60 anyway, wouldn't you?
No.
In a battleground.
We should talk about that eventually, doing a little bit of PvP.
Yeah, and so, dinging 60. Where did you ding 60?
Where did I ding 60?
Do I even remember?
Do we know?
I'm asking you, but...
I'm not sure we actually know where I ding 60. That's a bit of a shame.
We don't actually remember. Taylor's deep in thought.
I just realised. I dinged 16 when TBC had already begun. I actually thought that. I just realised.
How do you remember this?
I remember this because I was in Sunken Temple getting to level 58. Groundbreaking news, everyone. I actually didn't. For some reason, I thought that I actually dinged 60 in vanilla, straight vanilla. I remember being level 58. And
is that to go through the Dark Portal?
That's to go through the Dark Portal. I remember being in Sunken Temple and dinging 58. I dinged 60, I believe anyway, in Hellfire, I guess, because it was the other way.
Oh, right.
See, that's strange, because I'm sure at one point I knew the situation, but...
Yeah.
Of course, I would have been 58 to get through the Dark Portal.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. I dinged 60 when TBC was well into its
I would have been
swing.
I would have been raiding and all that. And 70, so.
But that's for episode 2, I guess, when we talk about TBC.
Yeah.
Well, let's just go through.
We haven't actually talked about your sort of experience starting for Car and all that sort of stuff.
Vakar was TBC.
Oh. Sorry.
But I'm just trying to think if there's any more memories. And so you got the Corporal title. But I'm a bit confused by this because obviously I don't think. Well, I was still leveling at that time. How did you get Corporal without being 60? Could you go into Battlegrounds at level?
Well, it must have been the case that
through honour kills.
I genuinely believe that I didn't actually have Corporal in TBC. I didn't get Corporal in TBC.
Right, you got it in vanilla.
So I got it in vanilla. So I must. It's obviously not a very impressive title, is it? Just getting Corporal through honour kills, I believe.
Yeah,
but I think that's how you got it. But so I got Corporal by doing Warsong Gulch and all that sort of stuff.
Now, I've got a question here. When you levelled, I think you levelled in tank spec prot.
Yeah, must have, yeah.
And that's why it took so long probably as well.
I remember, actually, for the majority I levelled in tank spec, but I do remember in Burning Steps and Searing Gorge that I changed to Fury. I remember...
Were you ever arms?
Oh, I think I was only arms in TBC.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
To do PvP and stuff.
So I think with sort of most of these memories here are from TBC and stuff. So let's just say game mechanics and stuff that we sort of remember and things that have changed now.
All right.
Thoughtbot. Do you remember reading quest text?
This is at a time when obviously the quests aren't completely directing you to the quest objective, is it?
You had to read the quest.
You have to read the quest
in order
text
to know where to go.
Yeah.
And I think probably for quite a while you didn't know about Thoughtbot. So you actually had to read the quests.
I completely forgot about Thoughtbot, actually going to an external website to actually figure out what...
Well, people still do that now with Wowhead, but
Wowhead,
Thoughtbot was something else. Do you want to just check that out actually and see if it's still up?
Does Thoughtbot still exist?
Thoughtbot.
Oh yeah, I forget how you spell it.
No,
wow,
it's still up
and it still looks the same.
Sam, I think that's
Thoughtbot World of Warcraft database.
Wetlands.
I actually had no idea that Thoughtbot was still up, and it still looks like a pretty old site, doesn't it?
I think it does actually look the same. I was thinking of an Elite Dragon.
It looks like it hasn't changed.
Wow.
So I just realised if we're going to talk about sort of game mechanics and how the game was, and just sort of miscellaneous sort of mechanics type stuff. Do you remember? One of the things is going on the actually taking apart and going on the website, the WoW Europe website.
Oh, I do. I actually do remember. Are you going to talk about I'll leave you to talk about the item sets.
That might have been a thing in TBC where we actually sort of we went to Stephen and
I do know what you mean. Checking out the WoW website just for information.
Going to WoW-Europe.
It looks different now, obviously.
Before Battle.net.
Before this stuff.
Yeah. Essentially, I remember I had all this information about all the dungeons and reading the descriptions for Zul'Farrak when you actually had to sort of... We didn't know when all the content was on, which was in the game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's just one other thing.
And so, another thing I remember...
another thing.
So when you were leveling, you had to read the quest text carefully... north of this bridge, slightly northeast, south, blah 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 blah, to know where this box is that did not sparkle. Yeah. So you had to find sort of camouflaged objects in the world.
Yeah. And so another thing that I remembered actually was that obviously because I dinged 60 in TBC and I started at the very tail end of vanilla, I wouldn't have actually done much. Raiding, of course. However, I do remember being in Ironforge, handing in wool for a strange Anchorage war effort.
You could have been a Scarab Lord.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
But so that was just one of the weird end game things where it's strange because even though things I've played in vanilla, I probably would have heard in passing people talking about molten core and things, but obviously I had no chance of doing that at all. Really.
Yeah. So we're actually going to change how the podcast works a bit here. I think what you've been listening to previously has been a bit rambly. That's just because it's been a bit hard when you're conscious of being on the podcast to not leave gaps when you're trying to think of all the memories you can. And
you're sort of just you're sort of just trying to patch things together, aren't you? You can miss.
So you don't want to leave big gaps, and that's why you've probably heard a little bit of editing going on. So I know you sort of had something to say, Taylor.
Yeah. So at this point, I just wanted to say that this podcast isn't just a tribute to WoW, it's actually for people who want to reminisce as well. People who might have started before us or a bit later than us. Essentially, it's just to help people be nostalgic, essentially.
That's correct, yes. And so like I say, we're going to be changing how the podcast works a bit. So to give us a bit of structure, we're going to be talking about set things in each episode. So that could include music, cinematic, art, gameplay, raiding, and PvP. I know we've already talked about gameplay. We've already talked a little bit about gameplay, raiding, and PvP. So in a little second, we're going to be talking about... I know you had that little trouble with me saying a little minute earlier. Yeah. I changed it to a little second, so hopefully that's better.
Slightly better.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about music, cinematics, and art. Then that'll probably round off this vanilla episode.
Yeah.
It's not been the best. It's been sort of like a pilot episode.
It is a pilot episode, indeed.
So yeah, we'll be right back with music. So I think the WoW music is definitely the most important thing for us.
Yeah, definitely.
In World of Warcraft, I think it's some of the best music I've ever heard.
Yeah, indeed,
to be completely honest,
it's the most nostalgic. It's of course it's sort of connected, intertwined with sort of old memories and
the zones.
It summons up.
As soon as you listen to a track, you're brought there instantly. You can feel. I know we'll talk about Tanaris. Yeah. And the other zones in a minute, but when you listen to a Tanaris...
Tanaris is the first one, yeah, definitely.
A Tanaris track, especially the old track, the new Cataclysm track is a bit different, but the old Tanaris track, just the heat
The heat
that comes off of
the heat of the zone.
yeah, when you listen to that track, you can feel the heat of the zone.
I believe that's
Just
actually,
I can't even begin to do it, but
I believe actually there's a dev interview where it's an old vanilla dev interview where one of the guys actually mentions even in the art the heat of the zone.
yeah, definitely, and that's definitely something that's important to portray when you're doing the music.
Definitely.
So props to Russell Brower
And everyone else.
and Jason Hayes.
Yeah, definitely.
And everybody else that contributes to the WoW music. So I know you used to listen to the soundtrack daily, and I don't so much as just because
it's one of those things where it's comforting actually. It really
Yeah.
is. It sort of takes me back to the
you were listening to some tracks from Echoes of War,
Echoes of War, yeah.
sort of the compilation.
sort of remix.
Yeah,
sort of
soundtrack.
more orchestral versions of something.
So you had the idea to open because we've got the WoW soundtracks downloaded. We're just going to rattle off some of our favourites
and we should say this is obviously just for vanilla.
Yeah, we're only going to be talking about vanilla stuff as we talked about the new format changes in the podcast.
Let's just do it freeform, I guess. We'll just sort of.
Sure.
So we're going to start with Teldrassil. Now, for me, it's one of my favourite music pieces of all time in WoW, and of course, it would have been the first one that I would have encountered.
Is it your favourite?
Yes, and I think it might.
That's
be
quite
my
a big
favourite. It is.
title you've given it there.
Yeah.
It is one of my favourite, but there's probably a couple that I like more, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah. I believe I did have a top 5 WoW music. But that's,
that you must have found that difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of you have to constantly listen to the pieces and
So I've spliced on. You should be hearing the track at the moment, and I think one of the things that I get
editing magic.
Yeah. One of the things that I definitely notice about, I feel is the best thing about this track is the harps and how everything just feels so magical.
The harps.
It feels like wonder.
It's wonder incarnate essentially. Especially when it's your first character, it's your first zone, and one of the things is the harps are actually sort of. It's like the embodiment of the wisps.
Yeah, definitely.
It's one of those. It's ethereal. It's magical.
I do tend to. Yeah, I know you like sort of calmer ambient music more.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with that. Another track. You reckon? Oh, one of my favourite tracks is obviously Stranglethorn Vale. Another sort of foresty jungle sort of biome there.
Stranglethorn. You should be hearing that now. And
Stranglethorn is one of those pieces. It's tropical heat.
Yeah.
It's sort of.
You just think of trolls and you think of everything to do with that zone.
One of obviously we've probably passed it by now, but one of the things is I believe there's a laugh track in there. It sounds like it's like a troll laugh track.
Really?
I've listened to it quite a lot.
I'd love to hear that. I've not heard that yet.
It's a troll laugh track, and it's got the heat of a tropical jungle.
Indeed.
It's got your tigers, it's got your panthers and your gorillas, and it's one of those zones that encapsulates the jungle sort of atmosphere, doesn't it?
Indeed. All these zones, all these music tracks capture the zones, and
that's the thing about vanilla. If we want to just quickly summarise vanilla, we'll go on a few more tracks, but we find that as the expansions go on, they become a lot more orchestral.
That's definitely something I know I've brought up on MO Champion a couple of times. That Worlds of Warcraft is definitely more. It's more dramatic. It's got a big orchestral sound. It's a lot more movie-like. It's a lot more theme.
Sweeping, isn't it? It's more sweeping.
Yeah.
It's more sort of an action-oriented sort of sound, isn't it? Whereas vanilla, and definitely TBC. We're obviously going to TBC later on, but vanilla is very quiet, very ambient.
So we can't talk about a vanilla WoW soundtracks without talking about Elwyn Forest.
No, indeed, no. It's one of those pieces, isn't it, where it's so iconic, especially for a human. And I mean, your character's a human, isn't it?
It is sort of lodged into your brain, isn't it? I don't
yeah.
think I can even describe that soundtrack. It's just
no. I mean, we're going to play.
You feel it in your.
We're going to play this as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll play all the songs we're talking about.
It's just one of those. It is one of those more soothing sort of It's movement, isn't it?
It feels like the start of the game.
Yeah, it does. It's a nice, quiet sort of.
Now watch this, Taylor. Dum 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 dum. That is the old Orgrimmar soundtrack, and I remember that so much in TBC on my old main character, jumping about on the old Orgrimmar bank roof, and
And the thing is,
insane.
I should say I don't actually have as much of a connection to that as you do, because I actually only
you never played Horde.
I never played Horde until
in the early days.
Cataclysm.
Indeed.
With the mage, undead mage, but that's one of those really quite epic.
I've got to say it definitely fits more with the old Horde, where it's more shamanistic, more wooden.
Yeah, it's more tribal. It's definitely it's lower key, isn't it?
It's not this whole Garrosh, angry steel and stuff like that. It's really soothing, and also I think it might just be the ambient track beneath it, the ambient sound. But I think you can hear dogs. That's
something I should actually mention. It's not just vanilla specifically, but I actually listened to the ambient tracks. I sort of ripped them from.
I guess you could talk about that now, since we're not really going to talk about it next episodes. But the ambient, that's something a lot of people, I'm sad to say, probably don't really pay attention to. It's it's really nice if you're listening to this. Go on WoW and turn all your sound off and just put the ambience up. Just walk around a tavern. Yeah, and you can just go in and put your ambience up and hear just all the different things. You can hear the World of Warcraft world, the real world.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, with ambient music, where it's not. I mean, for us, we've always played with. Some people don't even play with the music on. They play with their own music.
So I can't deal with that.
Yeah, we've always listened to the WoW music on. Mm-hmm. But even another level is to experience the world how it would actually be experienced,
and that's through the real sounds of the world of ambience.
So you go inside a tavern, you can hear all these glasses sort of moving around, the fire crackling and all that.
Dwarfs laughing, people.
Yeah, I mean it's just.
It's almost quite beautiful how you can hear the arrangement, and you can never tell when it loops again.
Yeah,
but that's just me.
Definitely. And what I should say that even though I quit in Mists of Pandaria, I got to level 88. I actually still sort of logged in to the game
to hear the ambience.
Just to hear the ambience, just to walk around Teldrassil and.
I was going to say that's probably just for some of your machinima projects, but it's just so nice to just log into the game and put your ambience up and walk around.
That's one of my favourite things as well. I am interested in sort of ecology and biomes and things like this, and
so to hear the crickets
and the landscapes, yeah, definitely. And it's just, if you think about. There's so much detail in just one ambient track, and it conveys the zone so well.
And then most people don't listen to it.
Yeah, but there's so much of it though.
I think when we're talking about music, we can really get into the mood that WoW sometimes gives you. I mean, and allows you to feel. If you go to Westfall or to Naris at night with the moon shining, and you listen to the ambience, there's just something. It is a different world.
It's exactly. It's not just a game. It's not just we obviously you've got the whole other aspect where you min max and you do the stats and all that sort of stuff that I've never really. Let's be honest. I'm sort of more that I sort of appreciate the game from a different perspective. So it's one of those things where there's just so much detail, isn't there?
Yeah.
All the different art aspects.
And some people
just music itself.
Some people just stream and play bad trance music over it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so go for some more of these tracks, or
sure.
I guess Thunderbluff is a good.
Thunderbluff's amazing.
I never really, obviously, you did trans.
I did play a Torn for a bit, but it's one of the lesser heard tracks just because most people don't go to Thunderbluff.
And that's the thing that comes with the music as well. That each race is obviously influenced by some certain peoples in real life. Obviously,
a certain culture.
Native Americans, certain cultures, of course, with Tauren. Native is somewhat sort of. Sort of Japanese architecture and things like that. It's also sort of Celtic as well. A lot of this as well.
And so you can really hear that in the instruments that they use. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, Thunderbluff uses a lot of flutes and
pipes and things.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Is there any more on this first this vanilla soundtrack?
Well, I think actually what we could conclude with Shaping of the World.
Indeed, I was going to say
one of my
the main title,
tracks.
Legends of Azeroth, Legacy, and Echoes of the Past. They're the big cinematic.
And the Shaping of the World, for what we're speaking about sort of the atmosphere, all the zones and the music, and everything that goes into again making the world feel alive. The Shaping of the World is a brilliant track because it combines everything. You can imagine the Titans creating the world, and it's just so orchestral and epic.
Indeed.
And
it feels like Warcraft. Dum 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 dum. Exactly. That's probably not a Shaping of the World, but you'll tell me. But and there's also a call to Arms, Seasons of War. I think the intro movie Seasons of War is a cinematic. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And obviously we could talk for quite a while on the different things like Graveyard and Sacred and Lurking, where they're not specifically for a zone, but they're for different events.
Yeah. Graveyard as well. The first time you die, again, it's a bit of a morbid.
There's a thing about that, I don't think that's changed.
And even now, that takes me back to the first.
When you die, if you've got your sound on and your music on, you'll hear what you heard from vanilla, and it's that
first time.
That spirit whispering.
That's the thing, and of course we're talking about vanilla. We're not talking about Cataclysm where everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where it captures. I mean, some of these tracks obviously they're here forever, really, and you can just constantly listen to them. So that's good.
There's a thing about the WoW soundtracks not including as much as we'd like. I mean, there's I think for Wrath of the Lich King there's 5 or so hours of music. Proper.
There is.
If you were to listen to all the MPQ files and extract all the different files, but for this you only get about. I mean, there's 30 tracks here in the vanilla soundtrack, but. Yeah. I mean, there's just could be so much more, and there's no reason really to.
The thing is, and there isn't actually. I do believe that it's slightly changed, but I think in the track "A Call to Arms" there's a Barons tune.
Yes,
Barons tune, but the Barons itself, it's slightly different as well. I'm not entirely sure why that's in there.
And isn't there a thing about the Anchorage soundtrack having something from Zangermarsh as well?
Yeah, but obviously we're going to keep it to vanilla because we're talking about. Yes. Yeah, and I do want to point out that even though there's only 30 tracks and some of them are they're very short as well.
And that, yes.
The soundtracks such as Mosaic, where they actually come back and put some tracks sort of into the whole collection of music for a while, is great because obviously some of them are missed out. But I don't know why some of them are omitted.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. I don't know if we want to talk about this now, but or maybe is this for the Warlords of Draenor episode? What would you say is your best soundtrack for the expansion? Which expansion is the best soundtrack? Do you want to leave that maybe? We could leave that if you want.
We could leave that. I reckon we'll leave that till
for a later episode. No, that's fine.
Yeah, but I will say that just looking at these zones, I would say that Moonfall, Stranglethorn, Tanaris, Dunmarrow, and probably Shaping of the World. Just some of my favourite some of my favourite music pieces. And
there's a thing that we've both missed out here. You cannot talk about WoW vanilla soundtracks without talking about the tavern music.
Of course,
that is
we're talking about tavern ambience, but tavern music.
Yeah, indeed.
It's just incredible.
And all the different variations of tavern music.
Did you get the Dwarven? You get it. I believe it's.
There's so much more than when we were listening to it.
Gallows End. There's actually a. I don't know if you know this. You should. But there's actually a tavern album.
Yes.
It's got Gallows End, Undead. It's got all the different. There's loads.
Indeed, I'm just trying to think if there's anything more we can say about the individual tracks or the soundtracks in general. I mean,
we've given quite a few.
Yeah, it's just so varied, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's orchestral. It's nice.
The thing.
Well, I like to call.
Well, the thing is, when we go through each of these tracks, some of them are obviously generic, and some of them could be used, like maybe Lurking, for example, could be used in several zones. Mm-hmm. But most of these zones are named for a zone, Stranglethorn and Tanaris, for example. So, and each music piece is as unique as the zone. So they're like little microcosms, they're like little worlds. And as soon as you go in them, you're experiencing.
It takes you right there.
Yeah, and I could go on for hours about how. Just imagine the scale of what the actual zone would be like, and all this sort of stuff.
Well, I guess we'll talk about maps and stuff like that in a later episode.
In a later episode, again, we'll talk about
I guess that's it for music. So we're actually going to talk about cinematics next, the original vanilla cinematic, and we'll be right back.
All right, thanks.
And so now we move on to the vanilla cinematic, the very first cinematic.
Indeed. So
this is
I actually don't think that I would have seen this when I actually started playing.
Right.
I don't actually think I would have known about, because of course we have to say we didn't actually play the original RTS games.
The RTSs, yeah.
So I didn't really have any clue about the lore at all.
Indeed, we didn't have a clue about the lore until we didn't really pay attention to it until Wrath.
Yeah, I had no idea who Elden was on TVC, but yeah, so
what we're looking at right here is the map, and it says Blizzard Entertainment presents this. Imagine the goosebumps people must have got when they came from the RTS and seen this dwarf's face.
This is a case of where you can actually try to jump into other people's minds who've got even more of a connection to the sort of the lore and the universe.
So you're seeing a real dwarf there, the World of Warcraft dwarf. That used to just be tiny little polygons running about in an RTS.
And the thing is, if we're talking about theme as well, this is the classic fantasy. The thing I like about the cinematic is that it's a showcase of all those different zones. Obviously
It's the montage.
It's the
type.
montage type of sort of cinematic, isn't it? And they had a few of those until they sort of went more story.
With Wrath, yeah.
Yeah, and so, to some extent, TBC
And
as well. With the
somewhat, yeah.
with the narration, but yeah.
And you see Ironforge there, just beautiful.
And I should say, one of my favourite thing is actually the zones. The music has come second to that, but I love seeing the renditions of, and we're seeing Teldrassil now. Teldrassil being my favourite zone. One of the things I actually campaign on MMO Champions sometimes, I create threads about this quite a lot,
Yep.
is that I'd love to see more CGR, detailed real-life CGR of the zones that I love.
You basically want to see the best rendition you can
Yeah.
of the zones that you love.
And
that's why the Warcraft movie will be such a mind-breaking.
And we'll talk about that obviously
in a later episode.
Yeah.
So this Night Elf is running through your favourite zone at the moment.
And then there we get the showcase eventually of the turning into the pan for the druid.
And we have got it on slow just so we can talk about it a bit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's just the cinematic shows you.
So this Night Elf is obviously a druid here.
Yeah. So it shows you the detail, doesn't it, for each zone?
Oh, definitely.
Just imagine. And we're seeing, and you obviously be familiar with this yourself. We're seeing the undead here, and I love that little sort of
the jewel there.
It just sums up the warlock, doesn't it? It puts his foot down. Corruption.
Check this staff out. Look, he's obviously in Brill in the undead starting zone, and look at this. That's quite an interesting staff there. He's got.
Yeah.
Very warlocky. Very
That is. I mean, if you compare this, I know we shouldn't be really talking about other expansions, but if you compare this to like Mr. Pandaria, for example, it's such a change, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And we're onto the Tauren now. Look at the scale.
This is definitely one of the most iconic scenes that I can think of.
Look at the totem pole there. I've actually.
Yeah. There's always things you miss.
There's always things you don't really notice. And look
like
at
the shoulder
look at the
pads.
river as well. It's so much. It's obviously a matte painting at the back, but it's so.
Obviously, that's so it's Mulgore and.
Yeah, the scale is just there. Look at that. Just imagine. I just like to.
You would love to be
imagine,
there
yeah.
if you could just transport right there, right now.
There, yeah.
And so this transition to the fiery
I believe it's the orc.
gates of Orgrimmar.
Yeah. So you can see there.
And he's obviously just trying to scare us with this massive.
There's so many different renditions of the orc, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Isn't there? Because this is so different, isn't it?
It does certainly look different from the more stylized Mr. Pandaria one.
Yeah.
And
the mage, of course.
I did always think. I always did think.
Character, is he?
Yeah, when I first seen this, I thought, is he some sort of big bad boss? Like, why is this human here on this tower? But it obviously just looks like sort of like a storming sort of area.
Yeah, it's just a sort of showcase of different
fighting and
different
invading,
you can play and all that. So
Infernal.
And coming back to the dwarf at the start, I love this bit here. There's such weight.
Indeed. And the way this totem slams into this bear's.
It's a bit, it's brutal. But
and it's coming.
That's the thing, isn't it? There isn't that many cinematics, is there? That show like proper. Obviously, you get lots of in-game cinematics, but it's the combat in the real world.
Indeed. And I wonder how this Night Elf got to Mulgore just then. The Night Elf female. So in this, so it's obviously just a mage, but he looks really like an end boss. I always thought, why is this human mage getting so much screen time?
I mean, because he's
just seems sort of random.
He's specific, whereas the Tauren is sort of a sort of generic Tauren. But yeah,
it does seem like he's the Illidan of the. He's sort of showcased.
Maybe we're missing something there. I don't know.
But I think it's just a random human mage.
Random, yeah. So that's the cinematic.
And then you get the logo.
Showcase, yeah, and the logo, the original logo.
Pretty simple. Pretty
vanilla,
simple logo coming up.
It's one of those iconic, legendary cinematics where it's just wow in a nutshell, isn't it? Because it showcases each thing.
And that's pretty much that. So
yeah, so we've been going on for about an hour and 15 minutes. So
indeed, actually, obviously because this is the first episode, there's going to be a few changes in episode 2. I'm sure episode 2 will be much more structured.
Yeah.
We're actually going to not talk about the art because it's not really that much to talk about.
We did
talk about that the fantasy theme is more traditional in this.
I reckon we can talk about the theme. We can talk about the theme, but we can't really go into individual art pieces, can we?
We can say obviously that vanilla was very bare bones and it's not as nice textures and stuff like that.
I reckon in TBC there is a more painterly feel, more pastoral sort of thing, but we could.
Yeah, we can, but there's not that much to talk about. But I do see your point.
And the form will change eventually as we do more of these and all that. So I think we should call it there. I think
we'd like to thank you for listening to episode 1 of Caverns of Time. hopefully this has sort of inspired you, and if you started at the same time as us or before, you've sort of been able to reminisce. I'm sure episode 2 will be a bit better and just in the overall structure, and that we won't be rambling as much. But I'd like to thank you for listening from Sarathus
and from Santuri. So thank you for listening to Caverns of Time. Cheers.